So I'm currently in the middle of making a review for another film at the moment, but I'm gonna do something I've never done before. I'm going to stop making that video for now and actually make this one, since I'm already past the deadline with that video and I'm about to approach a deadline for this one. It's my own deadline, I set it up for myself. And it has to do with Hayao Miyazaki, mostly because there's a new movie that's actually coming out this week, and I want to talk about something in relation to Miyazaki, because I love his work as well as anyone else, and I think he's an awesome guy. What I'm about to share with you, which I'm pretty sure you probably already know about, is gonna make him sound and look even more awesome. So I'm gonna put that video aside, the one I'm working on right now, and focus on this one, because I feel like it's valid. So with Miyazaki's new film coming out, I decided I want to talk about his older work. More specifically, how he tried to get it out into the US. The one I'm actually talking about is Princess Mononoke, which actually came out in July of 1997 in Japan and was released in the US
2 years later in October.
Basically, when Miyazaki was trying to ship this to Miramax, which was the company he was working with at the time just to get the movie out to America, it was unfortunately left into the hands of a very greedy dictator of a producer named Harvey Weinstein. Dictator is pretty lightly, he's a fucking asshole. The point is, he got the film and he basically took it and said it's too long and decided to ship it back. And Weinstein's mindset, basically, if he sees a film that's more than 90 minutes, he feels the need not to release the film, because, you know, that makes sense. Hey, this movie is way too long, 2 hours too long. Let's shorten it to 90 minutes. In fact, let's shorten it to 60 minutes, so it won't reach feature length. It can be disqualified from the MPA requirements, so that this movie doesn't get released. Fuck off, dude. Based on what I've researched, Harvey Weinstein has been notorious when it comes to releasing films like this. Princess Mononoke wasn't the only film that he tried to subject to doing this, but he also had a bunch of other films too. Although one of them wasn't Pulp Fiction, which he and his brother Bob had personally produced the film for Quentin Tarantino and basically helped him release the film back in 1994. 3 years before Princess Mononoke came out, it baffles me as to why he would think this is necessary and why he thinks this needs to be done. I'm not entirely sure what's going through that man's head, but it's clearly not logic. If it were logic, it would have to mean he would have to have watched the film, in the same way he did with Pulp Fiction with Quentin Tarantino. So the only reason why I would think he would come to this conclusion as to shipping the film back to Miyazaki would mean that he never watched the film. He just saw like the runtime and just shipped it back to Japan. What made this even more awesome though is that Miyazaki shipped it right back to him and said, no cuts, fuck you, I'm releasing the film the way I want to release it. That is badass. So after that happened, Weinstein immediately took this as a threat, saying, you're finished, it's over for your career, you'll never work in this industry ever again. Literally threatening him into thinking that what Miyazaki's values are completely meaningless, and it's like, he's basically like, if you want to release a film, you gotta release it my way or the highway, like that type of bullshit. And I'm glad Miyazaki didn't stand for that. If this asshole even took the time to actually watch the film before he thought it needed to be shortened, he would at least understand as to why it can't be shortened the way he wants it to be. Let's analyze this and sort of contrast the movie's point of view with the situation between Miyazaki and Weinstein. Let's pretend that Ashitaka is Hayao Miyazaki and that San Mononoke is Harvey Weinstein. I know, this is pretty silly and ridiculous, but just hear me out for a second. Ashitaka throughout this entire film is trying to prevent certain wars and fights among living beings of the earth, because he knows that those fights will only bring chaos, destruction, and suffering to those involved, and to even those who aren't involved. The only way to stop that war is to find what the problem is and sort it out before things get any worse, and to understand why they're clashing with each other. In other words, seeking eyes unclouded by hate. San, however, wants to involve herself into these fights and encourages others close to her to do the same. So that includes her mother wolf, the two brothers, and anyone else in the animal kingdom. The human side is no different to those impulsive actions, and them clashing together just doesn't solve anything. And it causes her hate for humanity to grow increasingly. And her actions, in terms of continuing those wars, don't really solve anything, it only makes the problem worse. The only way to solve the issue is to compromise with each other's values and stop the fight before it happens. It's no different from what's going on between Miyazaki and Weinstein. The only difference is, Miyazaki saw that compromise and wanted to keep the film the way it was in order for that lesson to come across the masses of the people watching the film. Whereas Weinstein would rather fight against that, therefore showing the problem as to what the film is trying to show itself. So in a way, it creates a bit of an oxymoron, sort of a cycle that just keeps going on, and Weinstein's just continuing it the whole time. It creates a bigger problem than there needs to be. That's why it pisses me off that he would even think this movie needs to be shorted. It just sounds like a childish way of saying, I don't like it, send it back, it's not American enough. I don't know what this man thinks, but it's complete horseshit. This is only the gist of what I mean in terms of the details, in terms of what happened. There's plenty of articles you can read through in order to get information as to how it happened. If you want more vivid detail as to what happened and what went down, I suggest reading this book. It's called Sharing the House with a Never-Ending Man, 15 Years at Studio Ghibli, written by Steve Alpert. Steve Alpert was basically the guy behind all the animation English dubs for Studio Ghibli. Basically, if it wasn't for him, these movies wouldn't have made the light of day outside of Japan. So yeah, if you want more detail on that, just go get this book. You can find it on Amazon for like $20. It's definitely a good read if you're a Miyazaki fan like myself.